People were so overwhelmed about being shut in their houses watching the images of this tragedy over and over again, that the opportunity to get outside, to be with other people, to be in a room doing something that maybe took their minds off of what this was for even a little while, was something that people were embracing. And I think it was at that point that I knew that Broadway was really going to be okay. September 11th, which was a Tuesday, I was having breakfast at the Polish Tea Room at the Edison Hotel.
Well, it was my first day of rehearsal for Mamma Mia, and I, like every good actor, went to therapy and the gym right before. And I was on my way to the gym down at Union Square. I lived on 14th and 6th at the time.
That morning, actually, I'm never up before at least 10 or 11 when I'm working. So, but ironically, that morning I was going to be heading out to Queens for an audition for some TV show.
We had done a preview the night before September 11th at Urinetown. And that morning was a bright and early morning for me because my daughter had just started middle school.
So anyway, my cousin called me from DC and said, are you watching the news? Have you seen what's going on? Because I guess the first plane had just hit.
I went upstairs to the League, which was right next door, and I found several of the staff watching television in our conference room, and that was around the time that the second plane hit, and so obviously this was no accident.
Everyone was standing there frozen and looking at and saw that building on fire, the first building, watched the second plane fly in, and then my feet were frozen. I couldn't move at all, and people were stunned, were crying and screaming and calling, trying to call. I tried to call my husband, I couldn't, and when I actually stood there and watched the building come down, and I thought, I have to get home.
My first thought, of course, was about my family as opposed to my show, and ran downtown to get my daughter.
The first order of business was to get all the producers of the shows and the theater owners together on a conference call to figure out whether we were going to play shows that night.
We got all the phone calls that we were not going to have rehearsal that day. I think it was merciful that we did not have rehearsal that day, that there's no way we could focus on what we were supposed to be doing.
I don't remember when we were contacted. I'm sure we were contacted by stage management. I do remember that we were not given any kind of a clear idea of when we would be performing again.
I remember we did get calls probably mid-afternoon that, of course, Broadway was shutting down. I mean, the city was shut down for all intents and purposes.
Then we shut the League down and everybody went home. I guess Giuliani was sending most people were told to go home. The subways were shut down. The buses were stuffed with people. You couldn't really get on a bus.
No one knew what the immediate future held for shows. At that moment, it actually, even with us getting ready to open, we were supposed to open on the Thursday of that week, it felt almost insignificant to be thinking about that.
So I found out that afternoon, of course, that we would not be doing a show on Tuesday, and then we did not do either show on Wednesday, and we came back on Thursday night to perform.
On Wednesday, there was some talk about wanting to put the lights back on Broadway soon. And as it turned out, the mayor called for everyone to go back to work.
We began to talk about what it would take to get the shows up and running. We had gotten a very strong message from the mayor and from the deputy mayors that the mayor wanted Broadway open as quickly as possible, not only for the economic benefits that getting the city back to work would provide, but also for the psychological benefits that Broadway being up and running would contribute.
Well, we were all so traumatized by it. You were just kind of shocked and walking around and so inundated. I don't know how you could not be, but we were inundated with the pictures of it. because it was running on the news constantly. So they did call rehearsal. We get there, and there was, what they did at that point was had a circle of people so that we could all tell our experiences and talk about it if we need to. And they continued that for a few days, which I thought was very healing. It gave everybody a chance to bond with each other about this horrific experience that we were all going through.
We certainly had people who knew how important it was to get business going again, because who knew, would tourists ever come back to New York ever again? I mean, what was going to happen in the world? Would there be shows that could not reopen? And that's certainly something we tried to translate to the actors and the crews, the companies of all the shows, because some of those folks had misgivings when the decision was taken to try to open the next night, that Thursday night, the 13th, which is in fact when we opened.